Good afternoon and welcome to the POOLBEG PHARMA PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged, can be submitted any time via the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Simply click on Q&A, scroll to the bottom, type your question and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question received during the meeting itself. However, the company review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. Before we begin, we'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to Jeremy Skillington, CEO, and Professor Brendan Buckley, Chief Advisory Board Member of POOLBEG Pharma. Good afternoon.
Wonderful. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Maybe it's a bit late to say Happy New Year, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's a fast start to the year for POOLBEG, as you have seen, with two RNSs, two important RNSs around our lead program, POOLB 001, which Brendan and I will speak to this evening. So again, appreciate your time this early evening. And we'll progress here. I will say we have about a 45-minute window. We have got a hard stop at 6:15. Brendan is rushing off to catch a train. So, but again, delighted that Brendan can join me tonight to talk in particular around the oncology aspect of POOLB 001 and its applications to CAR-T treatment. But I want to start by referencing the RNS that went out last week around the positive initial data around our severe influenza program. So as you know, and we spoke about it several times, that we were running a challenge study, an LPS challenge study, to essentially better understand the anti-inflammatory effects of POOLB 001. And in this setting, that would link into severe influenza. And as the data has come through, last month we closed the trial and reviewing the data over Christmas and beyond. We're quite happy with what we've seen so far. I think the trial, we could say, is a success. There's still data analysis to go. There's still quality control analysis to go. Database lock is pending, etc. So again, very happy how things have gone so far. So that's on the LPS. I'll speak to that. And then the oncology expansion, as you know, from the severe influenza side, we're tackling the cytokine storm or the hypercytokinemia. And this also has applications to other diseases, and in particular oncology and its use in CAR-T cell treatments. And again, Brendan will go through that. So we did file a patent around this space, again, to protect the use of P38 inhibitors for use in combination with CAR-T treatments, again, similar to our use for severe influenza. So again, file that patent. So again, moving in a different direction. I should say this is what was stated at IPO, that we know we have a safe and effective, a selective P38 inhibitor, and we want to expand it to increase the value of the product when it comes to POOLBEG and ultimately partnering with pharma. So that's the main topic tonight. A little bit different. We usually ran through our full pipeline in previous presentations, but tonight we just focus on 001 with a reference to the pipeline at the end. So again, I'll take this initial section around 001 and the application in severe influenza. Many of you who've attended previous presentations will recognize the left-hand side of this slide. This is our clinical trial design for use in for LPS challenge study. So we ran this study in the Netherlands with CHDR based in Leiden. And the trial design here compared the effects of POOLB 001 on inflammatory responses driven by LPS, both intradermally, that's localized treatment, as well as intravenous LPS challenge, that's systemic inflammation. And we wanted to get a better understanding of how POOLB 001 would block that inflammatory response. So again, we looked at this over 3 doses, 30 mg, 70 mg, and 150 mg, again, with the ultimate goal of identifying the best dose to take forward into future clinical studies. So this will inform us a lot about how we apply POOLB 001 to future studies. Severe influenza, yes, but now in the CAR-T setting as well. So to say, this trial went well. We closed out the site, finished the last dose back in December, closed the study. Again, the initial safety was very encouraging, very positive, maybe not unexpected, given that this has been in phase 1 treatments previously. But on the right-hand side is what gives us particular excitement, in that the initial reviewed data, again, I say there's some further analysis to do. There's quality control analysis as well. But the data from the LPS challenge study, as interpreted, indicates the trial has been successful. Again, which brings us great joy and certainly some relief, but very happy with how things have progressed there. So what we are seeing is a marked reduction in both local and systemic inflammatory response, which again, LPS drives the P38 pathway, and what we're seeing is our molecule is blocking that response, which again, linking that to severe influenza, that's what we expect will happen. Severe influenza is driven by the P38 response, and we expect our molecule to block that inflammatory response, and again, bring these patients back to baseline when it comes to the inflammation and stopping the progression of severe influenza. We're also seeing, again, very encouragingly, a clear dose response. So as I mentioned, we have 3 doses, 30, 70, 150. And what we're seeing is that there's a different, there's a better response at the higher doses, which again is what you'd expect, but what you're happy to see essentially in a human clinical setting. And we've always said from a POOLBEG standpoint that our ultimate goal is to get early human clinical data and then begin the partnering process. So I will talk about it later on, but we're just back from a very productive trip to San Francisco to the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, where we spoke to a number of pharma companies about this program as well as others. But again, we're encouraged with the data we're seeing so far. So the program is well, the drug itself is well tolerated across all doses with no serious adverse events. And as we said, full data readout analysis is ongoing with the readout expected in Q2 23. So again, very happy with what we're seeing so far from that clinical study run in the Netherlands. So I do want to talk a little bit broader. As I said, we spoke for a while about the application for severe influenza. POOLB001, a P38 MAP kinase inhibitor, again has potential to go beyond severe influenza by dampening the cytokine release syndrome, or CRS, for other diseases. So as I said, we've talked specifically about severe influenza up to now, but now we're looking beyond this. As I said, we filed intellectual property around its use in CAR T cell therapies. And CAR T has been used for a lot of lymphomas and leukemias. And again, Brendan will go through the specifics of that. But what happens is that, as a result of the therapy, that there's a high incidence of this CRS, the cytokine release syndrome, which is an unwanted side effect from this treatment. Now, this is a terrific oncology therapy where you are actually seeing cures, but the side effects are actually quite severe for these patients. So what we want to do with POOLB001 is to block this CRS, and ultimately, the cures will progress, but they're not in that difficult circumstance of having these side effects. So given this, the data we're seeing from the LPS trial results, we see that there's great potential then to apply this into the CAR T oncology setting. So on the bottom left, we'll talk about, as I say, just a reminder, we finished our LPS challenge study. Early data readout is very encouraging, with full data readout expected in Q2. And now we're switching gears a little bit, or adding gears, to look at the oncology setting. And it is a logical extension. We do know that P38 plays a role in driving other cytokine storms, including CAR T. So that's where we want to, we filed IP to protect as a class the use of P38 inhibitors with CAR T cells. It filed obviously just recently, so it's a 2023 filing, and we're beginning the planning process to get early human data in this cancer settings. And again, Brenda will talk to that. And beyond that, we are looking at other indications as well, so severe influenza and oncology, and we still look to further explore what we're doing. And just by the numbers, and we've spoken about severe influenza previously, 3 to 5 million people get infected globally. Again, we're all very familiar with respiratory viral infections by now. There are 500,000 influenza-related deaths annually. And again, the goal is to reduce that number. And we believe we can do that with a treatment like POOLB001, blocking the cytokine storm. And again, so to say, reversing that progress into severe influenza. Antiviral markets, in particular for influenza, touch 2 billion a year. So we think we'll be able to get into some of that market and generate significant revenue. And again, commenting, there's no current approved therapy for severe influenza. And as I say, we're branching now into oncology, where there's 18 to 9 million annual cases globally, 9.5 million cancer deaths. And for CAR T in particular, specifically, there's expectations that market will grow to 6 billion by 2031. So the number of patients that require CAR T is going to grow. And obviously the side effects that they will get, POOLB001 can minimize. So again, very excited about the application of POOLB001 in this space, reducing the toxicities for these patients in the clinic. And I will comment on this. As I say, we've just filed this patent. And again, a brief description here that it's the, we've kind of crossed the thresholds, let's say, of the patentability criteria, where we see novelty, non-obvious as an inventive step, and usability of P38 MAP kinases to treat this CRS that occurs very frequently in CAR T cell treatment. So again, we want to block or reduce down these toxicities so the patients will have a much better experience getting a curative rates from the CAR T treatments themselves. So briefly, the patent was filed January 2023. As you know, there's 20 years patent life there, so the clock is ticking. But again, as I say, it's unrelated to previous filings, so there's no prior art that can be claimed with respect to this application. Again, very important from an IP standpoint. It covers the method of use of all P38 inhibitors, not just POLB001, but all P38 inhibitors for CAR T cell treatments. As I say, this was discovered, as we were looking at the influenza setting. Where else could we apply POLB001 in the CRS setting? And CAR T was identified as a key path to pursue, where we see there's great value to be generated for Poolbeg and their shareholders going down this route. So again, we're looking at expanding into other areas, which obviously for IP protection reasons we won't speak about right now, but we do see POLB001 can expand even further. So with that, I will pass it across to Professor Brendan Buckley, who, as mentioned, is on our scientific advisory board and a key driver now with this oncology program as we move forward. Brendan?
Thank you, Jeremy. Just the first thing I'd say is that we are not kind of pivoting away. This is a logical extension in using what we know about a compound that we have already. And we're able to share lots of data from one program to another about the same compound. So I thought I'd just briefly go through what CAR T therapy is. And essentially, it involves a form of engineering of the patient's immune system to treat cancers. Our immune system routinely, we believe, deals with cancers as they arrive. And a small number of cells become cancerous maybe once or twice in our lifetime that evade the immune system. And what CAR T therapy is a way of bringing them back under immune control. So somebody with a leukemia these days or a lymphoma, we would harvest their white blood cells and then using a virus which puts a number of genes into those patient T cells in the lab, we put those cells back in again. And those cells with this new CAR gene, when they encounter the cancer cell, let's say a leukemia cell, they dramatically expand in numbers, they increase and multiply, and they also attack the cells and kill them. And these have been a really huge advance in the treatment of lymphoma and leukemia over the last number of years. There are quite a number of currently manufactured CAR T approaches, many of them involving big pharma. Now, a problem occurs that the immune system causes inflammation wherever a cancer cell is killed. And when that happens, there are chemicals called cytokines released from the site of that cell attack. And their purpose is to recruit helper cells from around the bloodstream to augment the T cell that has been doing the killing. And those cytokines can occasionally be produced in excessive amounts. So a kind of a firestorm builds up with excessive cytokine release, causing this cytokine release syndrome. So this overactivation of the immune system may cause breakdown of tissues and organ damage, kidney failure, very severe high temperature. And in a proportion of people, the results can be catastrophic and patients can die. So what we want to do here is to interrupt this immune overactivation. It's virtually the same thing that happens in very severe influenza. So we're deploying POOLBEG-001 to inhibit this cycle, this kind of chain reaction that occurs with immune overactivation. And by doing that, we hope that we can interrupt this very severe adverse effect of CAR-T therapy in those patients that get it. In some cancer types, in some leukemias, for example, up to 90% of people given CAR-T can get CRS to some extent. The cost of severe CRS is huge, involves extensive supportive care within the intensive care unit. So this is, mechanical ventilation, intensive supportive care, general organ support, steroids, and there is an immune treatment already approved, tocilizumab, which is an antibody against a cytokine called IL-6. There's off-label use of another one called anakinra. But these are used only when the CRS is well established. So in the clinic, doctors would use these when somebody has already shown the signs. And we believe that we can use our approach in a much more versatile fashion. The launch of our oncology program basically is now underway. Our patent has been filed just very recently just before the weekend. We have put together a panel of global experts who are advising us specifically on this area and who will help us to get a clinical trial program moving. And we hope to initiate this trial as we go through the various regulatory hurdles. And some of this will include doing some further non-clinical work in animals and in the lab. But here, what we're doing, anything that we learn in this program will also have benefits to our influenza program. So this is a very economical way of, so to speak, sweating the asset that we have to get the very maximum out of it, both commercially and potentially for patients.
Super.
So back to Jeremy.
Yeah, again, greatly appreciate Brendan giving us that overview. Again, very exciting approach from POOLBEG. Again, taking our lead asset and expanding it even further. And this will drive value, this will drive interest from partnering, etc. But again, we're following the science when it comes to the CAR-T treatments. As I say, there are issues, there are these CRS side effects, and we hope that we'll be able to treat those and the patients will benefit. So I will want to talk about two further aspects. We mentioned this before Christmas at our last Investor Meet call, that we were planning to attend the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference that was ran in San Francisco last week with a team of 4 going out. We had a variety of meetings with pharma, both global big pharma and also regional pharma, and talking to other collaborators in the space. Again, sharing the initial data around LPS, which again, they see the logic. We spoke to them about P38 driving severe influenza. And as you can appreciate, there's a lot of pharma companies are now moving back into the respiratory viral space post-COVID. They do see there's a market here. And it is a case of following the science. And the P38 and the use of P38 inhibitors for severe influenza is unique to POOLBEG. We have patents covering the use of all P38 inhibitors. So it's good that we had the positive data to speak to, albeit early positive data from the LPS challenge study. And again, we spoke even further about our other programs. In particular, what caught their attention was the AI programs. And again, we've spoken previously around the collaborations we have around RSV with our collaborators at 13 Biotech based in New York, and using this unique data set that we have licensed from hVivo, and identifying new drug targets, which has been a success. They've identified things that are quite interesting, and ultimately new drugs, and that's part of the collaboration as well. So we received details on those before Christmas. So we're sifting through to prioritize these now and get some non-clinical work done this year. So they were very intrigued with that approach, and in particular influenza. And we've spoken previously. Again, I think the COVID pandemic has woken people up to the fact that flu has been around for a long time, severe influenza in particular. And not that we ignore it, but we generate new vaccines every year that could be improved upon. So again, they're looking for new targets, new drug targets around this space as well. So that really caused a lot of interest from our pharma partners. And as I said, particularly those that have re-entered into the respiratory viral space. So I expect that there'll be a number of follow-up discussions with these farmers around both partnering POB001 when the full data readout happens in Q2 this year, and then in parallel the AI discussions around RSV and influenza. So again, we found that a very exhausting but a very productive week with the colleagues that attended. Again, as a reminder, just last 2 slides here, a reminder of Poolbeg's pipeline of assets. And some of these we inherited, we like to say we acquired from when we demerged from hVivo, POB001 in particular. You can see the severe influenza treatment is moving along. The LPS challenge study, full data out expected in Q2 2023. And now is adding value to that asset alone by moving into CAR cell treatments as a companion therapy to block this CRS. So again, very excited about pushing those 2 programs forward. And as Brendan said, they'll be complementary. One data set will lead to strategies for the other. So again, having one asset, having one molecule to apply in different diseases is certainly of interest to Big Pharma. Because it reduces costs from a manufacturing standpoint, from a regulatory standpoint, and of course they can build markets in 2 different areas. 002 is a broader application for respiratory viral infections, working on development plans there. I mentioned that manufacturing is our key next step. And then 003, a molecule vaccine for melioidosis, which has a 54% fatality, particularly localized in tropical, subtropical regions. And again, manufacturing is a key focus there. And we find that this will be of particular interest to non-dilutive funders, because it is an underserved market. There's nothing out there for melioidosis. And we do feel like that the US government organizations will be potentially a very attractive funder for this program. And again, on the bottom, talking about the platforms, where again, we expect multiple products will come out of each platform. The RSV collaboration that I mentioned with 1-3, and again, they've completed their analysis, and we're happy with what we've seen. They've come up with some very interesting drugs that we could move forward with. So credit to them. They've done, and again, this is work they've done in essentially a 9-month period. So again, there's a lot of a lot to be said for using AI to push forward with drug discovery and ultimately drug development. And again, Cytoreason, who we've mentioned before, Israeli-based, have multiple collaborations with big pharma companies. We've met with them in San Francisco to discuss other options beyond influenza. So again, we're having discussions there to expand into other collaborations. We'll see where that takes us. So again, they've been very productive. They expect to have their target readouts in Q2 of this year. So again, all is on track and a terrific team to work with. And then on the bottom, again, we've got non-dilutive funding to move forward with our colleagues at Anabio, who are based here at Cork, Ireland. They have this very novel and micro and nano encapsulation technology, which will protect the vaccine components. So you can take it as a pill and it gets into your gut, and then it's distributed and triggers mucosal immunity. So very excited with that work there. We received 2.3 million euros in funding from the Irish government to push that forward. So again, excited that, again, from a Poolbeg standpoint, we are capital light. Having somebody else fund our programs is obviously very exciting and attractive to us. And again, as a synergy in our discussions with Anabio, they were moving forward with their similar oral delivery platform to deliver GLP-1, which currently on the market for both obesity as well as diabetes. So again, this is orally given. It's normally injected. So this applying the oral technology to these drugs again can cause us to enter into a very lucrative market around diabetes and obesity. And again, we're planning to run this proof of concept exploratory trial that we expect to begin by H1 this year. So we're building all of the documentations and the regulatory discussions around that. So again, making good progress. It's a very fast start to 2023 for the Poolbeg team, and looking forward to again making progress and updating the markets on the various work streams and the progress that we're making on those work streams. So my last slide here is again as a reminder. As I say, I think the market is beginning to realize how well Poolbeg is doing driving our programs forward, and they see us as an attractive investment. And we want to keep giving confidence to the market that that's correct and that's accurate. So we see a number of near-term value inflection points in this year. We mentioned 001, the full data readout from the LPS challenge in Q2 2023. Again, encouraged and happy with the early data reads that we've seen. What's coming up next then is pushing the RSV AI program forward with the targets and the drugs identified. Having validation will be the next stage, just to get that proof of concept in a lab setting, and again taking it forward from there. And again, that, as I mentioned, that JP Morgan discussions with pharma, that proved to be quite interesting. That this is a new approach. We've got a data set that pharma doesn't have. They don't like being kind of out of the loop. A little bit of FOMO maybe, but they like to, again, a lot of discussions will go on to get in the loop when it comes to what we've seen from the outputs from the collaboration. Similarly, with the AI program around influenza with cytoresin, we'll have outputs in Q2 of this year. Again, pushing forward with our consortium. We have a terrific consortium of AnaBio, Trinity College Dublin, University College Dublin, to push forward on this oral vaccine platform funded by the Irish government. And again, as I mentioned, the GLP-1 feasibility clinical trial, again with AnaBio, and again, pushing that forward from a regulatory and clinical standpoint. So that's on the move, as it were. And as we said, moving POD 001 into the oncology setting is very exciting for us, again, outside of infectious diseases, but we'll be opportunistic when it comes to generating value for our programs and for our shareholders. I will flag, the team. We've highlighted what a terrific team we have here. Again, very aligned, exceptional track record. And I do want to highlight a deal that was announced last week, that colleagues at Amryt were based headquarters here in Ireland, were acquired by Chiesi, an Italian pharma company. And I will give a lot of credit to Cathal Friel, our chairman, and Ian O'Connell, our CFO, and indeed Brendan Buckley here, who were in Amryt very, very early on, and again got the company up and running, got it running. Brendan was involved in licensing some of their early programs, and what a terrific success for the Amryt shareholders, receiving a deal value 1.4 billion. And we've said at the start, our goal is for Poolbeg is to drive in that direction as well. The $1 billion magic number, we hope to push in that direction as well. And again, I think we're off to a very solid start when it comes to the programs we're driving forward as part of our pipeline. For the next year or so, we're got a very strong focus on business development. Again, partnering is what's key. We've always said as a business model that partnering is ultimately where the success comes from and where our revenue generation comes from. So we're building a nice stable of products then ultimately with partnering. And again, we mentioned Brendan joined as an SAB member, and terrifically building out a team with very experienced, very knowledgeable, very clever people. So again, from a Poolbeg business model standpoint, point 3 here, disciplined capital allocation. Again, we're very capital light. We'll invest in these models. I think it's, in the diseases we've selected, I think you can get early clinical data very quickly. So you're not spending lots of money for these long, lengthy trials that go on for years. So we'll get early data readouts that'll be ready for partnering. And again, we're well capitalized. Middle of last year, we had 8.9 million sterling in the bank, and we'll update the markets as the year goes on. And again, as I say, non-dilutive funding will be key for us, keeping the capital light model alive, and 2.3 million for our oral vaccine platforms. And there'll be other applications on the road. One is submitted, but there are other kind of in the mix as well. And then lastly, we are targeting large addressable markets. So infectious diseases, again, we've talked about this since IPO 18 or so months ago, that 250 billion by 2025. Again, CAR T now is a new addition, but using the same molecule, we can use the same data that we've generated from the previous phase 1 and from this LPS challenge study to move quickly into this proof of concept efficacy studies. And as Brendan said, that's already started with regard to assembling a team and moving it forward to begin clinical testing as soon as possible. And then the last point is talking about the GLP-1 entering into obesity markets and diabetes markets, which are large and underserved. And again, getting an oral GLP-1 will be very attractive from our partnering standpoint. And again, from the JP Morgan Healthcare Conference, we discussed with parties over there about this GLP-1 program. And if we're able to demonstrate that oral bioavailability, that oral delivery GLP-1, very exciting product to partner very quickly. So again, very excited with the progress we've made. Again, we're at 2 weeks into 2023. It feels longer, given how hectic last week was with our partner meetings. But again, very excited what this year and future years will hold. And I'll leave it there. Again, appreciate your time. And then we can switch to the Q&A session after I get a sip of water.
Perfect. Good opportunity to do so.
Thank
you both for your presentation. Look, ladies and gentlemen, do please continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab situated just on the right-hand corner of your screen. But while the team take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you the recording of the presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. Jeremy, as you can see, we've had a number of questions, both pre-submitted and throughout today's presentation. And thanks you to all the investors that have submitted those so far. Could I just please ask you just to read out the question and give your responses where appropriate to do so, and I'll pick up from you at the end.
Sure, happy to do that. Again, appreciate the questions being submitted. First one we have here from Mark J. How long do POOLBEG have access to infectious disease progression data, noting that it is owned by hVIVO? Really good question. When we IPO'd in July of last year, we had a 13-month license. So essentially, we have another 12 months to go. But we do kind of flag and highlight that a couple of things. I mean, we have a terrific relationship with the folks at hVIVO. I think we'll start discussions around the extension of that license. I think they see us, the fact that we've started 2 AI collaborations, etc. They see we're making good use of the data that they've generated, and obviously this is outside their focus area. So we'll continue to have those discussions, but we expect to be able to extend that. So 12 months left, but we expect to be able to extend beyond that. From Niall P. Will you be extending your AI model with cytoresin to oncology? That's a really good question. Our meeting with cytoresin at JP Morgan, again, they're highlighting they have existing deals with the likes of Pfizer and Roche and Sanofi, some of which are around oncology and immunology. There's a mix. We have a terrific relationship with them. The data we can generate from our oncology study, yes, that can be passed on to cytoresin for further analysis. We haven't discussed that directly with them, but as I say, we're very data-driven, very science-driven. So we will have a unique data set coming out of this, the use of P38 inhibitors in a CAR T setting. So there may be new and additional biomedical insights to analyze from that. So it's potential we'll expand beyond that. I will say this without kind of breaking any confidence, we are talking to cytoresin about other applications, non-oncology. So again, the collaboration is going very well, and it's all access to data sets. So we'll update if something progresses from there. Sparky J, a long comment or question. Hi, Jeremy. Congratulations for the great steps forward made in 2022. Appreciate that. Can you tell me what is the difference with POD001 as a P38 blocker and the many other P38 blockers that many pharma companies have experimented with before? Is it just RIP for the purpose of influenza treatment and now oncology? Why did the other companies walk away from these blockers? Great question, and quite long. So I will explain. Yes, you're absolutely right. If you look at anybody who has, I give an example like rheumatoid arthritis, they usually start off getting kind of methotrexate and hope that manages the inflammatory immune response. But then they progress on to biologics, and that's where you get an injection of a drug like anakinra is an example we mentioned earlier on. So these are anti-TNF, so they're hitting a TNF pathway, which again they hope is blocking the immune response. P38 was identified as a small molecule replacement, let's say, of TNF. This is going to be great. The P38 has a similar response. It drives this inflammatory response. From again, rheumatoid arthritis is an example. So they did run many trials looking at P38 inhibitors in rheumatoid arthritis. They saw this as a big and growing market as the population gets old. But what happens is if you take this drug for a long time, 6, 9, 12 months, note for rheumatoid arthritis, it's the rest of your life. They did see that eventually the liver didn't like the drug being present. So you had these liver enzyme elevations, which again was a safety concern. And that was enough to, people to kind of shut down the various programs. Now, the key point for that, as I mentioned, is that these are chronic diseases, so you need to have the drug on board for 6, 9, 12 months and beyond. But for the studies that we are doing, influenza is a good example. This is a 1 or 2 week treatment. So again, in a severe setting, so you know the liver issues won't arise, from that short. And again, from the LPS challenge study, when we looked at any of the safety data, it's all good and it's all clean. So again, very happy with that. And again, similarly with oncology, these are short-term treatments. You're trying to block that kind of inflammatory response that, as Brendan described, when you reinfuse these CAR Ts. So you're trying to, again, a very short duration of treatment. So again, this is clever from colleagues at hVIVO, now POOLBEG, identifying the shorter course of treatments using P38 inhibitors. And what you'll find then is you won't have the side effects that they had for long-term treatment, but you'll have the efficacy from a severe influenza and CAR T, we hope, setting. So again, appreciate the long question and sorry for the long answer, but I think it was worth explaining. Andy S., bearing in mind that CRS is a known adverse effect of CAR T and other broad spectrum anti-inflammatories are used to treat, is it the use of POOLB 001 in treating CRS novel? Well, we've discovered in the course of our our patent drafting, we looked at it. Nobody has people have looked at IL-6, anti-IL-6, as Brendan has said. There's no small molecule IL-6. But people had never looked at P38. So we do see this as novel. We see this as a novel approach. Again, I described the rationale for the criteria that we hit for patent filing around novelty, for example. So when we looked at previous publications, for example, there was no reference to P38. So again, what's good about this is we can use the data, as I mentioned, from the LPS and the phase 1 to move into this space. So people see that an anti-inflammatory is a good approach, but they hadn't looked at P38 previously. So we've kind of found a nice narrow window there. So, again, excited about that approach. What's the average percentage from Stephen Orr? What's the average percentage of people with severe influenza or cancer who will suffer from a severe cytokine event? And what is the potential value of this target market to POLB? We mentioned that up to 95% of people, 94% of people with CAR T do get this elevation of a cytokine response, which again can have that negative effect on the patient. So it's quite a lot of people. And what you'll find in a cancer setting is you're weighing the risks, benefits all of the time. So the risk is that you could die of cancer. The benefit is that you could be cured from cancer. The side effects are manageable to a large extent. So what we hope is 001 will be used for all of these treatments, as Brendan said earlier, rather than waiting for the CRS event to occur. Maybe we could get it kind of earlier in the treatment cycle. So again, we see this as a potential approach from a market size standpoint. We mentioned numbers. I mean, it can be quite significant. Again, our goal, to be clear, is to partner with farmers. We do have discussions around how we see the market size and how they will see it. And again, what a lot of these farmers will do, particularly those that commercialize CAR T cell treatments themselves, it could be a nice kind of add-on for them where they can come with a safer product. It'll be a combination, but it'll be a safer product for their treatments. And again, that may drive sales in their sense. So there's many ways to do this. But as I say, it's from a biology standpoint, from a medicine therapy standpoint, we see great benefits and great value here. All right. So again, appreciate that, Stephen Orr. I love the fact that there's no questions for Brendan, so I'll keep talking. Brendan, not a question, but an observation. I love these. A hugely impressive presentation and very strong metrics. POOLBEG Pharma has massive potential, and with Jeremy at the helm, is uniquely poised to gain traction to the moon. Brent, shucks. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And that wasn't sent in by my father, but you appreciate that. Question here, Nathan Orr, was there any interest at JPM meeting for POLB 001 and sepsis as a combined therapy with antibiotics? Really good observation. We talked, sepsis previously. I really do hate the expression, but people say it's a graveyard, and I really don't like it because it's a serious unmet need. For JPM in particular, no, that didn't come across. As I say, we talked about 001 and the LPS challenge study, etc. You're right. I mean, you have a similar inflammatory response. A lot of the time, by the time sepsis has kicked in, you might be past the point of no return. As I say, it's a very challenging setting, but a very large unmet need. It's something potentially for down the road, after we partner. As I say, that's something for it to be discussed. We had some pre-submitted. I should get to these some pre-submitted questions. Hopefully, there's one for Brendan. Are there multiple interested parties in 001 or just one? Just trying to assess contract execution risk. I would say more than one. As I said, we met with dozens of companies in JP Morgan conference. They do kind of track. We had that early data we were able to to talk about. And there will be recurrent discussions around as we get more data from it. They do see the value. They do see it as a standalone product. And we mentioned too previously, in particular in the Asian market, we see we could kind of make the pie bigger by licensing rights, to Asia, licensing rights to Europe, the US, etc. But we did have several, say, territory-specific discussions as well. So again, multiple partners is the best way to answer that. Can you take us through the process of partnering with regard to milestone stages in the process and a rough guide of timing for each stage? If I understand correctly, so with partnering, you typically start with a business development professional. A lot of the times they're scientists themselves. So you talk about the science, you share the details and information, and then they take it back to their dyed-in-the-wool scientists, those on the lab bench, those typically heads of research organizations, to get buy-in. Then you have a deep scientific discussion. If it passes from there, then they go into our data room. We have a virtual data room already built with all of our data and our documents, etc. Back many years prior to POOLBEG into as I say, when the 001 was first administered to humans, for example. So then they do the deep dive. A lot of Q&A comes from there. And then you're starting negotiating terms in parallel with the BD people, how they value it, how we value it. And ultimately, the partnering process goes down to getting internal approval at the pharma company. And then you negotiate the deal terms and the rights. So it can't. I've seen deals happen very quickly when both sides are motivated. Our goal is to have this kind of multi-party approach. We're trying to create some competitive tension. Pit 1 or 2 or 3 companies against each other. So again, that'll be coming in over the next months. And we mentioned we hired a terrific head of business development, David English, in September last year to drive the process. As I say, very encouraged with our discussions at JP Morgan. Let's see here. Realistically, when is the likelihood of a NASDAQ listing? Is it possible in 2023? Again, something we talked about previously. We have an ambition to do list, AIM, and then go to the US. It's a large market. You get a lot of attention over there. So we are talking to a number of companies. Cathal Friel, our chairman, talks about these fallen angels, companies that had significant value. And just with the choppy waters as it were last year, the values have dropped. So they're looking for options or alternatives for combination with companies where we can bring our pipeline and our cash and our future to a company and list. So we are kind of active discussions going on. We'll be selective. We want to pick a partner that can synergistic to our needs. So 2023 is entirely possible. That's all I'd say. But obviously we'll update the market if there's any significant progress there. Let's see here. You have hit all your targets, which is some achievement. I wonder, is this the same question? Question is, why is it taking much longer for AI results on influenza than it did on RSV? Okay, really good question. So 1-3, we began the collaboration back in February last year, and they ran the process really quickly. They've got a different approach. Again, I can't go into the details of their artificial intelligence approach. But they're looking for gene sequences across different different families, etc. See what's happening with the genes are up or down regulated. They're looking for targets, and ultimately they've got access to a database of molecules then that they can compare these signatures or targets, let's say, to the drug. So they have a very efficient process. Cytoreason, I don't want to pit one against the other, but Cytoreason have a different approach where they take that similar gene expression profile and they want to take an extra step backwards of identifying which particular immune cells are expressing the genes of interest. So it takes a little bit longer to kind of work your way forward and work your way back. But what you get then is this kind of this deconvoluted gene expression, which again is kind of fascinating. And to give Cytoreason credit, I mean, they've got some of the top, I think 4 or 5 of the top 10 farmers in the world collaborating with them. So they have a different approach, just a different angle, a different way of doing things. So again, they need a bit more time for that. But I think what comes out at the end will be equally valuable again to POOLBEG and or ultimately our partners and our shareholders. And let's see here. There was a question around H Vivo. Yes, in Poolbeg. And will this slow down the timing for partnering the asset? This, I presume, is the oncology indication we're talking about. The short answer to that, the brief answer is no. We see these kind of running in parallel, as I mentioned, with pharma companies. And a lot of who we spoke with have both infectious disease arms and oncology arms. So we see that, again, we're adding value. I mentioned, ad nauseum, that having one drug for multiple indications is of interest to pharma. As I say, from a manufacturing and regulatory standpoint, is very advantageous. But I won't slow it down at all. You have the potential of doing a deal with severe influenza, and then in parallel, they can fund, or we can execute, we can collaborate around the execution of the oncology clinical trial. So there's many ways that deals can be struck this way, but no, it's not like we're waiting for the oncology data to partner both. Not at all. Not at all. The severe influenza will be our priority right now. So let's go back to here. With regard to melioidosis vaccine, how soon can we expect to hear further news on maybe NGO funding of the trials in the field? Great question again. We had, I attended a symposium at JP Morgan where there was one of the heads, it was a non-dilutive funding symposium where the head of DARPA was presenting on all of those options. We had a one-on-one meeting with him afterwards, talking about melioidosis. It is of interest. So again, they go through a kind of review process, a grant application process. So that's something that we plan to do, given that melioidosis is a significant unmet need. And in particular, the US military are looking for something in that space because they're concerned that it could be a biothreat, but also they have a lot of their military in the tropical, subtropical regions that they want to protect from catching this disease. So I think again, appreciate the questions on there, and I think that is our time up. Again, appreciate the question. If there's anything key that we've missed on this, we can kind of answer separately. But I know, as I say, Brendan's got a hard stop. He's got to rush for a train. But again, appreciate everybody joining us this evening. Again, 2 weeks into the new year. Again, we've had a fast start and looking forward to a productive 2023, as if not more productive than 2022.
Perfect, Jeremy. Thank you very much. I was going to ask you for a short summary, but I think you've just delivered it, and thank you for addressing those questions you can from investors. And of course, the company
the next time there should be questions for Brendan.
And of course, the company will be able to review all questions submitted, and we'll publish responses where appropriate to do so. So thank you both for updating investors today. Can I please ask investors not to close the session? It should be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order the team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete and is greatly valued by the company.
Appreciate that.
On behalf of the management team, POOLBEG Pharma PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That concludes today's session. Thank you and good afternoon to you all.
Thanks again, everybody. And we'll speak again very soon.